Daniel here for Tabletop for One and my 10 after 10 solo review of Dragonbond Lords of Vaala. Now, Dragonbond Lords of Vaala is a fantasy war game designed by Jack Caesar, Alessio Cavatore, and William Burgos. And it's published by Draco Studios, which provided me with the review copy. And in Dragonbond Lords of Vaala, you face off against 3 other factions as you vie for control over the lands and over the Vaala Magic that will grant power. And the first faction to gain 10 Vaala will win the game. And so after 10 plays, I have 10 things that I'd like to highlight. First, we have the art and the graphic design. The color palette and the iconography and the overall choice of design on the board allow for ease of reading of the board state. At first, I thought I'd have difficulty reading the board and being able to look from automa to automa without struggling over the symbols and everything, but it actually turns out to be the exact opposite because the color choices and the graphic design all aid in the gameplay and actually help me out quite a bit. And then for number 2, we have the production quality. As you can see, there are some fantastic miniatures that are included in the game. There's 4 big miniatures, but on top of that, they have tokens for all the different armies in this edition, and I was worried that the tokens were a bit too thin. I wasn't sure about the quality of them, but as I punched them out and started playing with the tokens, I was actually surprised about the quality, and I'm really happy with it. And then couple that with a fantastic insert that fits everything perfectly and is easy to use. You can have it on the side of the table for the token wells and just pull tokens straight from the insert, and it works really well. And so for number 3, let's talk about the rulebook. The rulebook isn't long and it flows in a logical manner. There aren't a lot of rules, and the game's complexity comes from the player and AI interactions that you'll encounter. There did seem to be a little ambiguity with some of the rules, but thankfully one of the designers has been very active on the BGG forums answering all the questions, so there's a lot of good information on the forums if you have any questions about the rules. And so for the next few points, we're going to be talking about the gameplay. So for point number 4, let's talk about the action sequencing. In Dragonbond, you're going to take turns placing one of your action cards in a stack. The stack starts with an event card, then you'll have your action card, and then the next AI's card, and the next AI's card, and next AI's card, then another one of your action cards, unless you choose to pass. If you pass, then that book of cards, or the deck of cards, gets closed with another event, flipped over, and then you resolve each of those cards one at a time. It provides for an interesting strategic experience because you have planned out exactly what you want to do. Your first card you want to move, the next card you want to attack, the third card you want to harvest, or something like that. But it doesn't always play out that way because you don't know what your enemy's going to do. And so it does simulate the choices that another player might make, although sometimes it might seem a little random. Nevertheless, I love the action sequencing. It provides a streamlined experience and very interesting decision making. And so for number 5, we're going to talk about the namesake mechanic of the game, Dragonbonding. In Dragonbond, you're able to ally yourself with one of the opposite types of factions. See, there's 2 dragons, and 2 generals. A general and a dragon can ally together and then win the game together if one of them gets enough Vaala. This provides for interesting decision-making and strategic opportunities because while you might be fighting for Vaala, you might see that a dragon over there is getting all the power, and you might just try to position yourself to bond with that dragon. Now, bonding with the dragon is not absolute. You have to roll for it. And if you don't roll what you want, you may have to spend Vaala to re-roll. And so it's a lot of risk, but could be a great reward because then that bond makes you more powerful and possibly helps you win the game. But if you spend too much time trying to bond with a dragon, or vice versa, trying to bond with a general, then you might miss opportunities on the battlefield, achieving goals, gaining Vaala, and breaking down the other armies and dragons. And so for number 6, let's talk about one of the types of factions, and that's the generals. The generals are army gathering, conquesting type of factions. They're going to try and maneuver around the board, conquering as many lands as they can, keeping armies in those lands to keep control of those lands, build fortifications, upgrade their units, and then harvest as much Vaala as possible when Vaala shows up. The upgrading of units specifically for generals is so interesting and so fun, as you take one of your units and build them up, or all three of them if you can afford it, and then you have these awesome armies with passive effects and extra abilities that gain you an advantage on the battlefield. And so for number 7, we'll talk about the dragons. Now, the dragons are far more maneuverable. They don't ever control any land. They like to go from place to place, destroying armies, eating them up, because if they destroy enough armies, they'll actually gain Vaala from that. And then they'll try and harvest Vaala from the lands right underneath the noses of the generals. It's fantastic. It's fun. But they are challenging too, because dragons tend to be targets of battles, and the armies can overwhelm dragons quite a bit, so you have to be careful with that. And so on top of the Vaala being the end game goal, right, to get 10 Vaala, you actually can use Vaala to cast magic spells throughout the game, and these spells can drastically change the landscape of the battlefield. So saving all that Vaala for that specific moment to cast a really special spell can really make or break your strategy. At the same time, you may want to save your Vaala for using for other things. Now, when you spend your Vaala, you flip over the token and it stays on your player board. Still counts towards your total of 10, but you won't be able to use that Vaala anymore for the game. Nevertheless, the Vaala provides very powerful and interesting abilities and situations, and it's definitely worth going for, on top of it being the way you win the game. And so let's talk about the ease of solo play. Now, there is a fair bit of learning when it comes to the game, on top of learning the rulebook, how things work on the battlefield, how battles work, defense of fortifications or crossing mountains, and other things like that. There is a bit to learn. However, the AI is very smooth to run. You just use the symbols on the cards that they turn over and activate on their board what the symbol does. Now, the AI dragons act similarly to each other, and the AI generals act similarly to each other, but they have small differences, and that requires you to memorize what those differences are or constantly read them from their player boards. Thankfully, it's spelled out pretty clearly on the player boards what to do, and after a few plays, you generally remember everything that you need to do for each AI action, and it's not too difficult after that point. And then after that, it's a streamlined solo experience, easy to run, easy to remember everything, and a really fun gameplay. And also, the game is fast to reset. It really is. It takes like 3 minutes to reset the board, and you're ready to go again. And so for number 10, let's talk about the replayability. Now, after 10 plays, I have not seen everything that this game has to offer. Each play has played out differently because of the way the cards show up in the action sequencing, because of the faction that I choose to play, and because the strategies that I employ will change how the AI will react and move around the battlefield. Now, on top of this base game, many of the backers are going to get additional expansions and modules which will extend the replayability of the game. So if you like the core gameplay, look forward to the extra expansions and modules and see what they offer and how they extend that for you. But as for me, with just the core game, I have so much replayability and so happy with what it offers me. And so my final score for Dragonbond Lords of Vaala is 9 out of 10. From the way it looks on the table, to the interesting action selection mechanic, to the Dragonbond mechanic, to the streamlined AI, and an overall fun and challenging solo experience, I am so happy with this game. If you are a fan of fantasy themes and war games, quality productions, multiple AIs, any of those things, then this is the game for you. And so this has been a 10 after 10 solo review of Dragonbond Lords of Vaala. Please bear in mind that this is a review copy. I've not been paid for my review, but I have been given this copy. So take that into consideration. I've tried to give my complete and honest opinion about my experience with the game. Please ask me any questions in the comments below. Please also like and subscribe to this channel if you like the content you see here. And I thank you very much for watching Tabletop for One. Have a great night.